Face down on the pavement. Hands behind your head. Now! The shout, sharp and venomous, ripped through the quiet suburban afternoon. It was followed by the sickening thud of a body slammed onto the cold cobblestone, a knee grinding hard into the man's back. Air exploded from his lungs in a desperate pain gasp. How did it come to this? On a peaceful, tree-lined street in a town where this was never supposed to happen? 30 seconds earlier, it was a scene of perfect, wealthy tranquility. In the crisp October air of Summit Creek, the only sounds were the rustle of fallen leaves and the steady footfalls of a lone jogger. That peace was shattered by the aggressive shriek of tires. A Summit Creek Police Interceptor SUV had swerved to the curb on Sterling Avenue, cutting off the jogger's path. Two officers climbed out. The driver, Officer Leo Kent, was a rookie, his face young and uncertain. His partner, Officer Dean Miller, was a stocky, hardened man with a scowl etched onto his face like a permanent warning to the world. "Hold it right there, pal," Kent yelled, his voice cracking as he tried to project an authority he didn't possess. The jogger, James Holland, came to a smooth stop. He was a tall man in his early 50s, his 6'5" frame still lean and powerful from a lifetime of discipline. Graying temples flanked a sharp, military-style haircut. He calmly pulled the wireless earbuds from his ears, pausing a podcast on the history of the Cold War. He showed no alarm, only a mild professional curiosity. He'd done nothing wrong. "Is there a problem, officers?" His voice was deep and steady, a commander's voice, accustomed to being obeyed without ever needing to be raised. Officer Miller took a deliberate step forward, closing the distance and invading Holland's personal space. Here we go, Miller thought, a familiar contempt rising in him. Another one who thinks he doesn't belong to this place. With a flick of his thumb, he unsnapped the strap on his holster. The soft click was louder and more threatening than any shout. He performed a slow, insulting scan from Holland's worn running shoes up the simple gray sweatsuit to his face, as if he were appraising livestock for sale. "Got a call," Miller said, his voice a low, condescending drawl. A concerned citizen saw a suspicious individual loitering, casing the neighborhood. He let a smirk crawl across his lips. "And what do you know? You fit the description perfectly." The click, the smirk, the ugly emphasis on that final word. Holland knew instantly this had nothing to do with his sweatsuit. He'd seen that same arrogant look in the eyes of petty tyrants and hostile guards a world away. It was the oldest, ugliest script in the book, but years of command had forged a fortress of discipline inside him. He let the insult shatter against its walls, keeping his face a mask of calm. "What are you doing here?" Miller demanded, dropping all pretense of procedure. The question was an accusation. "Where do you live?" "I'm on my afternoon run, officer," Holland replied, his tone still impossibly even, though it now took a conscious effort. "My house is just down the street," he gestured with his chin. "Number 24 Sterling Avenue. The brick colonial right there." Officer Miller glanced at the impressive two-story home with its manicured lawn, then back at Holland. He let out a short, ugly bark of a laugh. Pure contempt twisted his features. "That place? A guy like you?" he scoffed, his voice dripping with venom. "Don't insult my intelligence. Let me guess. You cut the grass? Polish the silver, maybe?" "That I might buy." White-hot fury coiled in Holland's gut. He hadn't felt an anger this raw in years. He wanted to dismantle this arrogant punk, to show him what true power felt like. But a general doesn't get into street brawls. A general chooses the time and place of his battles. And this was not it. Not yet. He crushed the anger, letting cold steel replace it. His voice, when he spoke, was glacial. "Officer, your assumptions are profoundly unprofessional. If you need to verify my identity, I am happy to provide it." "Oh, listen to Mr. Professionalism here," Kent, the rookie, piped up, eager to get on his partner's good side. "We've got the right to stop anyone who looks suspicious. And right now, buddy, you're checking all the boxes." "Your badge numbers," Holland stated, his voice flat. It was not a request. "I want them. Now." The legitimate demand seemed to flip a switch in Miller. He lunged forward, puffing his chest out, his face inches from Holland's. "You don't have the right to demand a damn thing, old man," he snarled. "We ask the questions here. You got a record? You holding drugs? Weapons?" I am not legally obligated to answer baseless and accusatory questions, Holland replied, his voice now completely devoid of emotion. He was no longer a citizen trying to cooperate. He was an officer assessing a rapidly deteriorating tactical situation. No obligation, Miller ground his teeth. I'll show you obligation. Without another word, he shoved Holland hard in the chest with both hands. The attack was sudden and brutal. Holland staggered back, his training screaming at him. He could have used the man's momentum to disable him in a single fluid move. Air Force para-rescue taught you how to break things with terrifying efficiency, but he knew the unwritten rules on American soil. Resisting, even against rogue cops like these, was a battle you never won. It was the only excuse they were looking for. "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Holland growled, his discipline finally shattering under the assault. "You dare talk back to us?" Kent shouted, as if he'd just been given the green light. Like a pack of dogs, they swarmed him. Holland made the tactical decision not to fight back. He allowed their clumsy, thuggish force to carry him down. The world spun, and he met the cold, hard cobblestones with a jarring impact that sent a spike of pain through his spine. Miller's triumphant, vicious voice echoed in his ear. "Hands behind your head! Face down, now!" A knee drove hard into the small of his back, forcing the air from his lungs. The acrid smell of asphalt and damp leaves filled Holland's nostrils. He felt the cold metal of handcuffs bite into his wrists, ratcheted so tight they broke the skin. Around him, he sensed movement. Neighbors peering from behind curtains, their faces a mix of fear and pity. He saw the glint of at least 3 smartphones, recording his humiliation for the world. "What's your name?" Kent grunted, leaning close, his breath sour. "Don't play games!" Holland lay still for a moment, his cheek pressed to the cold stone. He gathered his strength. He gathered his focus. And then he spoke. His voice wasn't weak or strained. It was sharp, clear, and resonant with an authority that had nothing to do with his position on the ground. It was the voice of command, a voice that had cut through the chaos of battle and brought elite soldiers to perfect attention. "Before I give you my name," Holland said, each word a perfectly formed piece of ice, "I want you both to understand something. Every action you have taken, the unlawful stop, the excessive force, your racist language, has been recorded." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Not just by your body cams, but by at least 5 high-definition security systems on this street. Systems owned by my neighbors, people who know me quite well. And I assure you," he finished, his voice dropping to a level of cold promise that made both cops freeze, "the price for this will be your careers." A flicker of Miller's bravado returned, a weak flame against a rising tide of fear. "Is that a threat?" he growled, but the bluster was hollow. His voice trembled. "Who the hell do you think you are? Some kind of lawyer?" "Far more than a lawyer," Holland replied from the pavement, his voice a blade of cold steel. "Now I am giving you a direct order. You will contact your shift commander. You will inform him you are on Sterling Avenue and you have just arrested a man named James Holland." He let them absorb the instruction. "And you will tell him," he added with chilling precision, "that he needs to prepare for a very serious conversation with someone he cannot afford to disappoint." The absolute, unshakable confidence in his voice was unnerving. Miller and Kent exchanged a wide-eyed, nervous glance. They had never encountered anything like this. The name James Holland meant nothing, but the man who spoke it, pinned and cuffed, radiated an authority more real than their badges. Something was terribly wrong. "What is this? What game are you playing?" Kent stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "This isn't a game, officer," Holland said. "It's my final piece of advice. Make the call before this hole you're digging gets any deeper. And believe me, it is about to get much, much deeper." Kent hesitated, looking to Miller for guidance, but Miller was frozen, his face a mask of confusion and dawning dread. With a trembling hand, Kent fumbled for the radio on his shoulder. "Dispatch, this is Squad 5B, he said, his voice cracking. "Patch me through to Lieutenant Russo." After a moment of static, he continued, "Lieutenant, this is Kent. We're on scene at Sterling Avenue. We've detained a suspect." He swallowed hard. "Subject, identifies as James Holland." A heavy, crackling silence followed. Then a voice erupted from the radio, a frantic, strangled shriek of pure terror. "What? Holland? Say that name again, Kent. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Kent flinched as if he'd been slapped. General James Holland? My God, son. Do you know who you just put your hands on? You stay right there. Do not touch him again. I'm on my way, and that man better not have a single scratch on him, or we'll all be answering to the Pentagon. The transmission cut, leaving a ringing silence. Kent and Miller stood paralyzed, the blood draining from their faces until they were as pale as ghosts. They looked at each other in horror. Then their eyes fell upon the man they had brutalized on the ground. A terrible, sickening wave of realization washed over them. You're that James Holland? Miller whispered, his voice trembling with a disbelief that bordered on worship. The general? Holland didn't answer. He just waited, his patience more terrifying than any threat. He knew the curtain was just now rising on the main act. Less than 3 minutes later, sirens screamed through the neighborhood. 2 more patrol cars and a sleek, black, unmarked SUV screeched to a halt. The SUV's door flew open and Chief Morrison rushed out, his face a mask of pure panic. Behind him, Lieutenant Russo looked like he was about to be physically ill. Ignoring his own officers, Chief Morrison ran directly to where Holland lay. "General Holland!" the chief cried, his voice filled with horror. "My God, what happened here?" He whirled on his lieutenant. "Russo, what are you standing there for? Get those cuffs off the general immediately." A shaking Russo fumbled with the keys and hastily uncuffed. Kent and Miller stood off to the side, heads bowed, shivering as if caught in a blizzard. Their careers, they knew, were over. Chief Morrison helped Holland to his feet, personally brushing the dirt from his sweatsuit. "General, I am so sorry. There are no words for this. This shameful, unacceptable incident." Holland looked directly into the chief's pleading eyes. His own were as hard as granite. "Chief Morrison," he said, his voice weary but sharp, "your apologies are for you, not for me. You have a great deal of explaining to do. To the community you are sworn to protect." He pointed a steady, commanding finger at Miller and Kent, who flinched as if he'd fired a gun. These 2 officers displayed more than a lack of professionalism. They displayed a blatant abuse of power and a disgusting, overt racism. He locked his eyes back on the chief. "Tell me, Chief," he asked, his voice dangerously quiet, "is this the standard of conduct for the Summit Creek Police Department?" Chief Morrison's face went pale. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. He turned and a terrible, controlled fury radiated from him as he faced the 2 disgraced officers. "Miller, Kent, what in God's name have you done?" he roared, his voice echoing down the street. "You didn't just assault a citizen. You assaulted a general of the United States Air Force. You spat on the honor of this badge." He didn't wait for an answer. He whirled on his lieutenant. "Russo, sir, you will personally escort these 2 to the station. Take their statements. Take their weapons. Take their credentials. They are on indefinite, unpaid suspension, effective immediately," he commanded, his voice like cracking stone. "I want the full incident report on my desk by 7 a.m. sharp. I will be walking it into the district attorney's office myself. This will be handled with extreme prejudice. No leniency. No cover-up. Do you understand?" "Yes, Chief." 2 other officers stepped forward to begin the humiliating ritual. The audience of neighbors watched in stunned silence as Miller and Kent were systematically stripped of their power. The crisp rip of Velcro as their duty belts were undone. The audible click as their sidearms were removed and secured. And finally, the quiet, metallic scrape as their badges were unpinned from their chests. They stood there, disarmed and impotent, shivering in the cool air as their careers evaporated before their eyes. As they were led, speechless and white-faced, to a patrol car, Chief Morrison turned back to Holland, his face a mask of profound remorse. "General, again, on behalf of my department, I am so sorry for this negligence." Holland looked at the man for a long moment, his sharp, analytical gaze seeming to pierce the chief's soul. "Chief Morrison," he said slowly, his voice tired but firm, "apologies are not enough. They never are." He let that sink in. "I want to see action. I want real change in how you recruit, train, and supervise your officers. I want respect and fairness to be the default setting for every single citizen in this county." He looked past the chief toward his own home. "And believe me, as a citizen of this county, I will be watching every step of the way." He paused. "Now, if you'll excuse me, Chief, it's been a long day." Without another word, Holland turned and began the short walk to his house. The crowd of neighbors parted silently, their expressions no longer fearful, but filled with a deep and profound respect. Several of the older men, who understood exactly what they had just witnessed, gave him a slow, deliberate nod. Justice had been served.